Wow, this is cool. We got a poem summarizing Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny.
That's a really interesting way to think about that book, All those 20 lessons.
From those 20th century dictatorships, right? Trying to give us some guidance for safeguarding freedom today.
Yeah.
But seeing them laid out as a poem, I don't know. It just hits differently.
Yeah, it does. Like more emotional, more urgent.
Yeah, exactly. More of like a call to action.
Definitely. And what's so fascinating is, how this poem manages to take those really complex historical patterns
Yeah,
and turn them into these bite-sized pieces of advice.
totally. So I thought we could pick out a few lines that really resonated with me.
Sounds good.
Okay, so how about this? Stand firm at the start. Do not obey. The seeds of power grow that way.
Ooh, good one.
Right. It just makes you think about all those little seemingly insignificant acts of compliance that we
Yeah.
do and how those could actually be paving the way for something much bigger, much scarier.
It's true. And Snyder actually talks about this, like the psychology behind it, how these tyrants, they kind of test the boundaries. They start small. And if nobody pushes back, it's like they've been given permission to keep going, to escalate things.
It's like they're testing the waters.
Exactly.
And each time they get a little deeper, until you're in over your head and it's too late.
Absolutely. It's a slippery slope, from these little concessions to just like completely normalized authoritarian behavior.
Wow. Okay, so then there's this line, beware the banners of one-party reign. The colors they fly bring silent pain.
Hmm.
It reminded me of what Snyder says about the danger of having just one narrative.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, think about those regimes like Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
You only had one party line, one acceptable way to think.
And they use propaganda to create that.
Totally. To create that, what's the word?
Political homogeneity.
Yes, that's it. Political homogeneity. Everyone forced into the same box.
No debate.
No dissent, no questioning. And that's when you know that a society is really, truly in trouble.
Oh, and that made me think of this other line. Believe in truth. It's fading fast.
Yeah.
It makes me think about, back then it was straight up censorship, right?
Right.
But today, I feel like we're just drowning in misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we even know what's true anymore? It's like everyone has their own truth.
It's really scary. And that's where I think Snyder's point about critical thinking is so crucial.
Right.
Like, we can't just passively absorb everything we see and hear. We have to be really discerning.
Like, actually question our sources.
Yes. Question our sources, look for evidence, actively participate in defending the truth. Because the truth doesn't just exist on its own. It needs us to fight for it.
I gotta be honest, some of these lines, they're pretty intense. Like this one, I know, it gave me chills. And know your courage sparks the fire. With others' strength, we rise much higher.
It's like, it really makes you realize the power, the potential of one person, of individual action, even when it feels like you're up against these overwhelming odds.
And history is full of examples of that. Think about the White Rose Resistance.
During the Nazi regime.
Yes, they were just, students?
Yeah.
But they dared to speak out against all the horrors, the atrocities they saw happening around them. Talk about courage. It's a perfect example of what Snyder talks about with professional ethics.
Yeah.
Every person, regardless of their job, has this responsibility to act according to their conscience.
It's inspiring, but it's also kind of terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Like all that responsibility resting on just regular people, it's easy to feel powerless,
I get it. And I think that's precisely why the poem also talks about the importance of civic engagement.
And not just voting either.
Exactly. It says, practice politics beyond the vote. Apathy is a sinking boat. Like, we can't just sit back and passively hope for the best. We've got to get out there, participate, actively shape our society. So much to think about. But what does this all actually mean for people listening, like, right now in the real world?
I think the main takeaway from both this poem and Snyder's book is this. Freedom is not something you just inherit. It's not a given. It's something you have to actively work for, constantly safeguard.
And then that starts with each of us, right?
Yeah. Being informed, staying engaged, having the guts to speak up even when it's uncomfortable. Those are the things that really matter.
So, to quote that poem one more time, the tyrant's shadow fades away when all stand firm and light the day. So here's a question for you to think about. What's one small action you can take this week to kind of push back against that darkness?
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe it's fact-checking that news story before you share it, or actually attending a local council meeting.
Yeah.
What feels meaningful to you? That's for you to decide. But definitely check out Snyder's book on tyranny if you want to dive even deeper into these ideas.
Definitely a great read. Lots to think about.